it's mine. The prices blow my mind. I feel so rich. Oh yeah. I feel like a billionaire. I'm shopping like a billionaire. I'm shopping like a billionaire. Let's go. Temu, Temu. I'm shopping like a billionaire. I get it straight from the makers. I'm shopping like a billionaire. Temu.
Download the Temu app and shop like a billionaire.
Hi there. So, shopping like a billionaire. This commercial was broadcasted twice last year during the Super Bowl in America. And it broke 2 records. First of all, it was the most expensive commercial ever during the American Super Bowl. Temu paid $14 million for 2 broadcasts of this commercial. Another thing which is even more amazing is that it was the youngest brand ever that broadcasted a commercial during the Super Bowl. It was only 5 months old at the time because it only had launched in September 2022. Now what I'm going to do for you in the next 25 minutes is I'm going to explain to you what Temu is. There's a lot of very strange stories going around about Temu, and we do a lot of research at TechBoss China, so I'm going to share some learnings and some findings with you. But to really understand Temu, we actually have to go back in time a bit to the year 2016. Because 2016 was the year that a company called Pinduoduo launched in China, because this is all coming from China, basically. Now, Pinduoduo was what they would call a customer or a consumer to manufacturing platform. Now, I'm going to explain a bit what the company does. I have limited amount of time because I could tell you lots more about Pinduoduo, but the most important thing that you need to know now is that basically what they did is they looked at the traditional model for retail and wholesale, and they saw that, well, normally you have a trademark, you have a brand, and they go to a factory in China, they have these goods made, and we're still talking about the Chinese domestic market now. That goes to retail, to wholesale, that goes to retail, and eventually it ends up in a physical shop or in a web shop. But because of this, because of all of these logistical movements and all of these parties and middlemen involved, something that in China would cost 1 renminbi in the factory would be 8 renminbi by the time it reaches the consumer. So what Pinduoduo did is they turned this whole thing around, basically, and they said, what we will do is we will first aggregate a lot of demand, and that demand that we gather in the app, we will basically sell back a guaranteed volume to these factories. Now, and these factories basically bid on advertising in the app so they can actually get that volume. Now, another interesting, very interesting thing is they don't use any middlemen and they don't use any wholesale and retail. So what happens is that product goes straight from the factory to the Chinese consumer. And the only thing that that factory has to pay for then is the postage cost, which is really cheap in China, and they have to pay a certain commission to the platform, or basically the advertising that they pay for. So that is what happened in 2016. And the impact that Pinduoduo has had in China is enormous. If you look at this pie chart, in 2013, Alibaba, which you all know, you know it from AliExpress, but they do a lot more. Alibaba had about 80% market share in China, and the estimation is that next year, this will have shrunk to 35%. Now, a lot of that market share has gone to new players in the market. Not only Pinduoduo, as you can see, they took a lot of market share from Alibaba, but also Douyin. And Douyin, I will not discuss further today, because that's TikTok. And TikTok Shop is something that has already been happening in China a lot under the name Douyin, and that will also come to your market, so you better be ready. Now, so you might say, okay, Ed, that's all very interesting, but so what? We are not doing business in China, so why do I need to know this? Well, that will all become clear when you see what happened to the user numbers of Pinduoduo. They started in 2016, like I said, and very quickly they became extremely popular in China. But by about 2020, they had reached more than 700 million Chinese users. Now, there's about 1 billion internet users in China, so you can see that they sort of started maxing out their penetration. Now, and of course, they already had their IPO a few years ago, so what do you do if you don't grow in your own country anymore? Still grow as far as sales is concerned, but they couldn't grow much further as far as users were concerned. So they only could decide to go out of China. And that's what happened, and that's what brings us back from 2016 to 2022. In September 2022, Temu was launched in the US. Now, because I follow Pinduoduo for a long time already, I knew what the potential danger was here, but very few people were still looking at Temu at that time. But if you look at this chart, and I'm not going to go through all of the different text that you see here, I'll give you an opportunity to get the handouts later on at the end. But if you look at the very first point, Pinduoduo only started thinking about going cross-border in January 2022. Within 9 months, they launched the website. And the commercial that I just showed you went on television in February 2022. This is what they call China speed. This is something that we will have a difficult time in coping with. Because now, at this moment, in May, they're already active in 65 countries. And every country they launch in, they pour an enormous budget into advertising. Now, what you see here, for instance, is what they spend on advertising between January and November last year. I think they spent something like 3 billion in total in marketing. On Meta alone, on Facebook and on Instagram, they spent $1.2 billion in advertising. This also explains why Mark Zuckerberg really wants TikTok to disappear from the market in the US, but he's perfectly fine with Temu. So this is what's happening in every market where they launch. And in every market where Temu launches, because of this advertising, they will very quickly become the #1 most downloaded app. Now, except for China, because they don't need Temu in China, because they have Pinduoduo, and in India, because India has banned all of the Chinese apps after a border conflict a few years ago. Now, this is what happened to the number of monthly downloads. And as you can see here, something happened around May, June last year, and that's when they launched in Europe. Don't know if it was also immediately available in Switzerland, but they became available in the Netherlands. And of course, I had been following Temu for a long time at that point already, and I finally could place my first order to see what it was really like. This was my first order. It arrived within probably 7 days, relatively quick for a package that comes all the way from China. And what I did then is I started to do some research into the prices that Temu was charging. Now, sorry for the people from Amazon that are in the audience today here, because I'm going to show you some figures that you might not be happy with. But this thing, which was basically a cable organizer, I could have bought on Amazon for about 15 euro. Shein, which also has a marketplace, sells the same thing for 8 euro. I bought it on Temu for €5.38. €5.38. And then you might think, that's incredibly cheap. How is that even possible? But the thing is, we sort of have forgotten how cheap it can be to actually produce goods in China. Because if I go on Pinduoduo in China and I buy this same product, it costs me €1.05. €1.05. And the manufacturers still make some profit on that €1.05. I did the same thing for the whole order that I placed, and as you can see, it was about half the price of what I would have paid on Amazon, and it comes from exactly the same factories. It's just a different business model. On Pinduoduo, that would have cost me €3.23, the same products if I would have bought them inside China. That's how cheap things are. So instead of looking at Temu and saying, how can it be so cheap? It's just not possible. We should maybe be thinking, why is it so much more expensive elsewhere? Of course, there's reasons for this. Of course, Amazon has fulfillment by Amazon. Amazon also charges commission. Amazon charges search engine advertising. So there's reasons why things have a different price. But let's go back to Temu and let me explain how their model actually works, because very few people actually know this. On the left, we have the factory, the Chinese factory. In the middle, Temu, and on the right, the Western consumer, say here in Europe. Temu, because it's part of Pinduoduo, already has a lot of factories they work with, about 11 million, and they make a selection of these factories and of their products and say, give me your best price for that product, your absolutely lowest price. So, because they get a lot of volume, these factories give a low price, and then when Temu says, that's okay, good price, they put it in the warehouse of Temu, in this, Guangdong, in the south of China. Now, the thing is, Temu never buys this. They are not a reseller. The goods stay property of the factories. Then what Temu does is Temu decides the selling price. Those factories have nothing to say about the price this product is sold for to the consumer. And what's more interesting even, Temu says, we'll do all the logistics, we will do the marketing and sales and after-sales service. So they act like a reseller, but they don't own the goods. And it's fine with these factories because they think, I don't have people that can do cross-border e-commerce to those European consumers, so it's fine that Temu does this. I get a low price, but I get a lot of volume. Then the consumer here in Europe pays, and then the products get shipped from a Temu warehouse by an airplane to the country where the consumer lives, and is handed over to a logistical party. Now, there's a couple of things that I need to say about that because there's some misunderstandings. These individual packages get packed in these big boxes, and these big boxes are shipped to the logistical party that they partner with in the different countries. They get unpacked there, they get sorted, and then they come to the consumers here in Europe. So that means there's no individual packages going from China to Europe. So what some people say, Temu is using the Universal Postal Union postage rates. That's not the case, because it's not individual packages. Then they say, okay, they don't pay any import tax. No, that's correct, because most of the orders of Temu are lower than €40, and only in Europe, I don't know what it's like in Switzerland, you only have to pay when it's more than €150. So, and this applies to other shops that are sending packages as well. They do pay VAT in Europe because they have to pay directly to Dublin, and according to things I've heard, they pay a lot of VAT, so nobody thinks that they are cheating there. Now, back to this model. The factory actually gets paid after 3 months, and if the goods do not sell well, Temu tells these factories, come and pick up your stuff or you start paying inventory costs. So, what they also do is they start a bargaining system. If they find a product that is very popular, they will find a second factory. And those two factories will start bidding for the volume. If factory B is cheaper than factory A, they will stop selling factory A's products and they will start selling factory B's products. And the next week, the only thing that factory A can do is go under the price of factory B. And that's how they push down, with that bidding system, they push down the prices. But this is, of course, very risky because some of these manufacturers, they decide to use lower quality raw materials. Or maybe they are selling winter jackets, and to be able to actually give a low price, they start using less filling in the winter jackets. What Temu has done is they came up with a second system, which they also use in China, a penalty system. If a consumer complains about the quality of a product, the manufacturer, the merchant, has to pay 5 times the consumer price. Not his selling price, the consumer price. And if he just shipped a whole batch of those products to different consumers, he has to pay that penalty for the whole batch. Now you can imagine, with the small margins that they have, how much new product they need to sell to actually compensate for these fees. But by doing this, Temu tries to balance out quality and price. And it's a very delicate system. And anybody that has bought something on Temu already will know that quite often they're not there yet because the quality is not always very good. Now people also say, with these prices, it's impossible that they make a profit. It's unsustainable from an economical perspective. And that's correct, because after deducting all of the costs they pay for advertising, for consumer acquisition, for the logistics, last year they had a loss of 27%. But is this a problem? Not really, because they're buying market share. They're in a phase where they're buying market share. And their parent company, Pinduoduo, because they do so well in China, has enormous cash reserves. And they can continue playing this for a very, very long time if they want to. So how long? Well, actually, this year, Temu wants to reduce the losses to 18%. They want to break even next year, and in 2026, they want to be fully profitable. How will they do that? Well, a few things that they are doing at the moment already. So on top you see what I explained before, what they call the fully managed model. Now, in that case, Temu takes care of all of the logistics between their own warehouses and the consumer. They have recently started what they call the semi-managed model. In the semi-managed model, they basically allow a manufacturer or a merchant to put the goods in a warehouse near to the consumer. So for instance, here in Europe. Now, then the factory pays for the logistical costs. They can charge a higher rate per product, but Temu doesn't have that risk anymore and those high logistical costs. Now, another thing that's going to happen when they start doing this is they will be selling other products that are normally too heavy or too bulky to send in a package in an airplane. So they will be selling, for instance, household kitchen equipment, and they will also be selling furniture. That's all in their plans. So if you thought that you were safe, they basically will be able to sell everything in the future. Now, another thing that they are doing, I've shown you that I've bought this product for €5.38. They are also raising prices because this price was still subsidized. If you looked at the price of Shein, which was €8, that's basically what they will be aiming for, that same price level as on Shein. Now, sometimes people say, oh, this Temu business must be subsidized, right? And then normally they mean the Chinese government subsidizing Temu. But actually what happens is Temu is subsidizing the consumer. Instead of handing out coupons, they just simply lower the prices. And after the consumer has ordered on Temu a couple of times, they will raise the prices. The same thing is already costing me €7.28 now. What they also do is they start with free shipping, and after a while, well, you will have to pay, or you will have to have at least €20 in minimum order value. So this is how they are raising the average order value of the consumers. If we add up in most of the important markets in Europe, the visits to Temu, we can see that they have already, at the end of last year, they've become the third biggest e-commerce platform in Europe. Now, and they are very ambitious because they had $18 billion in gross merchandise value last year. They want to go to 60 million this year globally, and by 2027 they want to reach 140 billion. Now, that's still where they are at now compared to the global volume of Amazon is still peanuts, but don't underestimate them, because this, what happened in China, and what I've seen this company already do in their home market, which is much more competitive than here in the West, this could also happen here. This could happen to your web shops here in Europe. Now, in China, they say, when Pinduoduo launched, all of the big platforms, JD, Alibaba, etc., they all had to laugh about Temu. They were all laughing about their business model. It's never going to work. It's never going to work. It worked. And when it worked, they said, then they started studying Pinduoduo. Well, it's good that you are now in that phase, basically, right? You're here in the audience. And then, what is happening now in China since last year, all of the big internet companies are trying to be Pinduoduo. They are all copying parts of their business model, copying their price levels, and they're trying to be more like Pinduoduo. Now, what we need to do is something that a Chinese warlord, you might know him, Sun Tzu, he wrote the book, The Art of War, and what he said is, you need to know your enemy. And you need to know yourself, because if you know yourself and you know your enemy, you don't have to fear any of the battles. Then you can go into any battle. But my perception is that we know far too little about Chinese internet companies in China that are now copying their models to our world. So one of the things that you can do on TechBoss China, we write really in-depth, deep reports about Temu, TikTok Shop, and other things. At the end of the presentation, I'll show you QR code, and if you are interested, you can get a 50% discount on the newsletter. So use that and stay up to date. Now, what we also need to realize is that there's a lot of crazy stories going around about Temu. So everything would be made by child labor. Temu didn't build these factories. We were using these same factories years before Temu even started for our brands. Now, Temu steals your data and sells it. That would be incredibly stupid for an e-commerce company in China that wants to have cross-border business. Or the Chinese Communist Party. They use Temu to get the data from the app for you. It's all things that we say because of our image that we have of China. And quite often it's not reality. At the same time, there's a lot wrong with Temu. One of the things that they do, what they say in China, is they get on the bus and after that they buy the ticket. Which means is they first set up the web shop, the logistics, they start selling, and only after that they'll think about compliance, about quality, and maybe some marketing tactics that they use, for which, for instance, Booking.com is also using some of the same tactics, so it's also something that they learn from us. But as far as I'm concerned, I think it's very good that some of the consumer protection organizations all around Europe are looking at Temu and saying, well, something needs to be done because some of these products are actually quite dangerous. They're unhealthy, they're dangerous, and some of their marketing tactics are really maybe unethical. So it's good that we take action because we need to make sure that they are compliant with our regulation. Now, at the same time, it shouldn't be more strict regulation just because they're a Chinese company. And like I said, we've been using the same factories. And one of the reasons that they are selling now to us directly is that some of the brands have shifted their production away from China to Bangladesh, to Vietnam, to other places. These factories are not going to roll over and die. No. They'll decide, okay, if they don't want to buy our products anymore, we'll go straight to the consumer. And that's basically what I want to end this story with. We also need to look more at ourselves because we complain a lot about Temu, but who's buying all this shit? Huh? We are buying this crap. If we stop buying that crap, they will be forced to have higher quality products as well. So, if you scan this QR code, I'll send you the handouts of this presentation. I'll send you a link where you can get a 50% discount on TechBoss China, where we publish in-depth reports. And I'll also send you a bunch of links with more archives of articles about cross-border e-commerce because Temu will not be the last one. TikTok Shop is also coming your way. And to give you some food for thought, when I walk off, I'll show you a bit from a clip from Saturday Night Live that I think they broadcasted it last week. Look at what they are saying about the product quality on Chinese web shops, but pay a special attention to what they say at the end of this clip. And think about that, maybe also for a couple of days. Thank you.
Materials. Quality craftsmanship.
Oh,
Premium fabrics with no lead.
See, that makes me think there is lead in this.
No lead. Good clothes. Best prices. Minimal lead.
You said no lead.
Kind of smells like gasoline.
Okay, this is giving shady. Be real, is this shady?
If it was, would you stop buying it?
No.
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 Maybe.
Don't worry about it.